Welcome, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. Last week in my tutorial, I took an image that I found online and created a block around that. And the block is a little bit unusual in terms of size. So this week I'm going to take that block and I'm going to create a quilt around that. Okay, I've opened Electric Quilt. I'm going to select Open an Existing Project. And I'm going to find my Patriotic 2018 and I will select OK. And on the Blocks tab, I'm going to select the block I designed during the last session. Now that I have a sort of strange size block, I've got to figure out a layout that's going to work. So I'm going to go to the Quilt work table and I'm going to build this, so I'm going to do a new quilt and I'm going to select Custom Set. And I'm not going to adjust the layout yet because I don't know what size I'm going to need, nor am I going to worry about the borders. So I'm going to go to the Design tab. I'm in the Block Tools, Set Block. I'm going to drag this block I just did on the workspace. Now if you look at it with the Adjust tool, you can see it came in at the size that I designed it, which is 14 by 10.5. And so let me start with that, and then I started to think about what other things could I do to enhance this. And so there is the standard default variable star, so I thought let me play with that. So I brought it on the workspace. I can see that that looks a little bit too small, and so I decided what I would do is bring that up to 6 by 6. And I liked that size, so what I'm going to do is make sure I've got my grid snap options on. For the grid snap increment, I set it to a 1/2 inch, mainly because I've got, again, that weird dimension in that main block. And so this is going to allow things to snap a little bit better. So I'm going to move that, and then let me addition that there. So I'm sort of liking that. And now what I'm going to do is do a copy, and let me just do 3 pastes. And I'll do the same thing in terms of positioning on the bottom. So I'm, that's a little bit high. So I'm basically hitting that midpoint there. And then what if I just put some plain blocks in those spaces? So I'm going to do another set block, but I'm going to click on the 3 dots and select Add a Plain Block. And I'm going to drag that on my workspace. And for this one, I'm going to use my Adjust tool. And because I have Snap Block Size to Grid, I can just resize this. I always like to move things away and move them back in position to make sure they're working perfectly. I can do a copy paste. Do that. And I could either bring in another one or do another copy paste. And now I'm going to move that there and resize that to fit in there. And one more copy paste. And I'm liking that for my center of my quilt. But I have way too big of a layout, and I really would like to get that down to something more manageable. So I'm going to just use the ruler and measure this. And I have 26 inches there. And yes, I could figure out the math, but this is so much faster. And 16.5 inches that direction. So I'm going to now go to the Layout tab And I want to, first of all, make sure that maintain the existing block sizes when resizing the layout is turned on. And I'm going to change the width to 26 and the height to 16.5. And now I can go back to the Design tab, and everything perfectly fits. And now I'm going to go ahead and color this. And now I'm ready to work on borders. So that border seems a little bit big, so let me bring that down to 1/2 inch. And then let me add another border. And I'll admit that I tried a number of different things, but then decided that I wanted to go with the spaced squares. And I'm going to make this 4 inches. And again, I did some experimenting, but ended up deciding I wanted 3 blocks horizontal and 2 blocks vertical. And then for my last border, so I'm going to go back up and add the next one. I'm going to make that a 2-inch long horizontal. So now when I went to the Design tab and the block tools, I decided to use the set block, and I want to use this block, but it's not in my coloration yet. So in order to get it to save there, I'm going to add that to the project sketchbook. Now I can use this block with the controller command key and fill in the rest of the spaces. And then let me play with some additional coloring. So once I got this colored, I realized I liked it, but I didn't like, this was way too heavy. And so I thought, since I've got stars, what if I put some stripes? And on this one, what if I did a stripe, 2 stripes, and this direction did 4 stripes, which would sort of fit in keeping with the proportions of the design. So went back to the block work table, did a new block, pieced, easy draw, and I'm just going to make both of these a 4x4, snaps 4x4, and now with my grid tool I'm going to start and do a 2x1 color, and then I'm going to do another new block, and I'm going to make this one 4x1 with the grid tool and color that as well. And then I'm going back to the quilt work table, block tools, and I'm going to set these 2 blocks, and I'll play a little bit with rotation. And I decided that I really liked this. I always like to look at it without quilt lines, and so I'm going to add that to the project sketchbook. And then I thought, for another option, I thought, what if I tried to make this more modern and basically eliminate that block? Sort of funny after all the work to create it, right? But I'm going to do a set block, and I'm just going to replace that center block. Then I'm going to go to my fabric tools, and I'm going to recolor that, use my swap color. So a very modern look to this very traditionally started quilt. And so I will add that to the project sketchbook. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial where I shared with you my thought process on creating a quilt around a block. For additional tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com. And while you are there, check out my latest class offerings.